The London Chamber of Commerce and Industry English for Business exams from Pearson are among the best recognised and most highly regarded business-related qualifications in the world. They're available at 5 levels, from the preliminary through to the English for Business Level 4 exam. All the exams are tied to the Common European Framework of Reference, and certificates are awarded from A1 to C2 on the scale. Should a candidate be awarded a merit or distinction in one paper, then their certificates will reflect this by giving them a higher grade on the Common European Framework of Reference. Thus, a candidate who scores highly on the English for Business Level 2 test could be awarded the same mark, B2, as someone just passing the Level 3 test. Each test is a compulsory written paper with an optional listening and speaking test. All 5 levels concentrate on showing what the candidate can do through business contexts, rather than their understanding of language systems, and the level of the tests is reflected through the length of the paper. So whilst the preliminary written paper is 90 minutes long, this builds up to 120, then 150 minutes for levels 1 and 2, until finally reaching 3 hours for levels 3 and 4. Given that students will generally operate in the same areas of business, although obviously to different degrees of ability, the topic areas for the speaking and listening test remains consistent throughout all 5 levels. So, during the speaking test, the students might be asked to talk within the following fields: earning a living, the production and sale of goods, trade, money, transport, communication, education, or travel and tourism. And during the listening, they would expect to hear texts relating to business transactions, instructions, and arrangements, giving personal information, travel and work. Although it's worth bearing in mind that both of these papers are seen as additional optional components of the basic written exam, and so it's up to the candidate to choose whether to take them or not. The written exam, at all levels, provides the candidate with some form of input and gives them a set of realistic tasks based on this, ranging from showing comprehension to producing a piece of written text. At the preliminary level, this text might just be completing a form or writing a short note to a colleague, whilst at level 2 you would expect a candidate to answer 3 questions over 2.5 hours, each producing an extended piece of writing. From this level, it is expected that candidates will operate in English extensively during their working hours and will be required to use the language productively. A substantial part of the preparation process for the English for Business exams is to concentrate on a student's writing skills and developing these so that they can produce effective documents that have the desired effect on the target reader. How can this be done? Well, for a start, it is worth noting that most business correspondence is transactional in nature and will involve either the transfer of specific information so that the target reader is informed, or require some sort of action from them. So, getting students to produce vast tracts of creative writing is not going to be the most effective way forward. Far better to spend some time looking at the layout of standard business correspondence and giving the students enough practice, both through exposing them to examples and getting them to write their own. So, when they're asked to write a report, they have a standard model of what a report looks like and how it differs from a leaflet or a standard business letter. When looking through the input in the exam, it is often necessary for the candidate to choose which information to include in the writing and be able to do this quickly and efficiently. In levels 3 and 4, this input will cover both written and spoken input, and the task is often hidden within this input. So getting the students to give you the 5 or 4 or 6, depending on the task, most relevant pieces of information in a set time, 2 minutes for example, can be useful practice. With writing skills in general, we often talk about process writing and product writing, with process being recursive and part of an ongoing cycle of planning, drafting, editing until the final result has been achieved, and product being more linear, with a direct task and a clear outcome. Concentrating on both is beneficial for students. With process writing, for example, getting the students to draft a paragraph plan and work on a rough outline within a certain time frame, taking into account the information that needs to be included and the layout of the correspondence is very important. How many paragraphs, how many headings, bullet points, what are the pros and cons? What are your recommendations? What is the best way to introduce the information? To conclude a report, to compare these things. What you want to avoid is students rushing into the answer without spending due time and consideration on the input and layout. Remember, it doesn't take 2.5 hours to write the 3 pieces of text required in the Level 2 exam. It takes less than half that time at most. So make sure that students are trained automatically to plan, draft, write down key sentences, and think of different ways of presenting the information before they start on their answer. For example, if you're teaching in a class situation, after the students have underlined the key information from the input, get them to reformulate this in 3 different ways. Through negation and the use of antonyms. So, the budget is too small might become the budget isn't big enough. To synonyms. The finances are too tight, through to opinions and solutions. It might be necessary to increase the budget. If you can train your students to do this automatically, it will help them produce better answers. With product writing, you want to give the students a clear set of parameters from which to work from. For example, you might take a situation and get the students to respond to it in writing, but give them a limited number of words and phrases to work with. So you might ask the students to write a memo to the other employees, asking them to make their passwords more secure. But on the board, put some words like in, at, the, however, so, since, which, and tell the students that every time they use one of these words correctly in their memo, they score a point, and every time they use them incorrectly, they lose a point. Obviously, having selected words that students tend to avoid using through either not knowing how to use them, such as articles and prepositions, or giving them words that force them to write longer sentences, like conjunctions, relative pronouns, etc. One of the important considerations with an activity like this is that it's easy to produce some examples of student writing that you can use for peer correction purposes. Remember, it's far easier for a student to spot another student's mistake at the same level than it is to spot their own. Finally, you might like to combine both product and process by getting the students to draft an answer, and then by getting them to reformulate it by giving them some discourse markers that they have to include. The important thing is that students are given plenty of opportunity to transfer different types of information from a reading text to a piece of writing in different ways, and that the teacher allows them to reflect on which strategies work best for them.